Welcome to the Catholic Cafe, where Catholic truth is served fresh daily. We've made you a reservation in the luxurious corner booth, so come on in and see what's on the menu today. Now, here's your host, Deacon Jeff Drzymski.
Greetings and welcome to the Catholic Cafe. I'm Deacon Jeff, sitting in the luxurious corner booth of the Catholic Cafe. Venerable Tom Dorian is here.
Yeah, that's tough getting out.
Yeah, I know.
Getting that out.
You know what? Sometimes it just,
Got to get a little head start.
I'm 103 years old, and I think I'm doing pretty good
you look
for 103.
Great.
Thank you.
Do.
Don't look a day over 102, right?
You don't.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Venerable Tom.
Thank you.
And we have to pray for Sam. He's doing...
Still herding cats?
Yeah, well, this time it's like he's actually blowing up tires on cars. His friend has a bad tire or something. I don't know. He's explaining it.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like
that's
16
right.
texts,
It's actually
with
not
like
a
this.
joke. It's serious.
He really is. He's Sam's a good guy. Our little Ziggy here, he's got a friend that needs assistance with a car, so he's giving him rides.
He's like AAA for his friend.
So he's not going to be with us a couple of shows, but I'm sure he'll be back soon.
Yes.
So can hardly wait.
Can't wait.
So we are still at the tail end of the summer of Holy Matrimony. In fact, we've just got a few more shows left.
You think anybody out there is like, golly, man, you gotta change the subject, dude?
I wonder if a couple of people have decided they're not going to get married because there's just too much involved.
This is intense.
Well, we are now moving to another part that's so important. We've talked about marriage a lot, obviously, and one of the things we've talked about are the fruits of marriage. Mm-hmm. All right, we talked about the fruits of joy, holiness, things like that. But also there's the fruit of life, right? Yeah. Children, which is the natural fruit of marriage, mm-hmm. right? So children are natural to marriage. It's what marriage is, part of what marriage is intended for, right? Not exclusively, but it is all part of being married. And so it's important. That's why someone who says we're not going to have kids, the church would say, well, marriage is not for you.
Right.
Right. Because, I think I've mentioned it before, but where marriage, the word comes from the word, like matrimony is the formal way of saying marriage, I guess. But matrimony comes from the Latin phrase or words mater, monium. Mm-hmm. So it's the act of becoming a mother. Mm. So children is part of marriage.
It's natural.
And you've got kids.
We got 5 of them.
Yeah, and I have 9. So between us,
3 boys, 2 girls.
Well, we had the one girl first, mm-hmm. which we were blessed, right? Then 6 boys in a row. And just when Bess was thinking God didn't love her,
bam,
gave her 2 girls.
2 more girls
at the end. So to round things out. So
there you go.
Beautiful, beautiful thing to have all these kids. And it's important for us people to understand that, like when you're talking about like marriage prep, but also when you're talking about married life, you're also talking about kids. Mm-hmm. And so it's important to realize what that means. Now the Catechism has this wonderful phrase in paragraph 2685. It says this in the Catechism: the Christian family is the first place of education and prayer. Based on the sacrament of marriage, the family is the domestic church where God's children learn to pray as the church and to persevere in prayer. So this is like the Catechism I love this phrase, the domestic church. Because when we think of church, what do we think of?
You think of a parish, you think of a building.
Yeah, big place.
Parish grounds.
Yeah.
The school next to it.
That's right. Whatever. That's the church.
Yeah.
And then in loose terms, you might think of the church as being like all of God's faithful gathered together.
Right.
Right. And then in sort of a glorious way, the Catholic Church has the church, triumphant in heaven, mm-hmm. the church militant here on earth, and the church suffering in purgatory. We have these big, grandiose is not the right word, but big, glorious terms for church. Yeah. And yet, that little family, when you get married, when a boy loves a girl and a girl loves a boy and they get married, mm-hmm. they have the beginnings of a domestic church.
Yeah.
And so it is a church, and it's going to teach people to pray. And then the natural fruit of that union, children, mm-hmm. like if the marriage is blessed in that way, then what's going to happen is they're going to be teaching that child to pray.
Right.
And so that's important for us to understand that, a lot of times we look at church and we think of church as something that happens on the weekend.
kind of like a box. You just check in a box.
Well, yeah,
Let's go to church.
You show up because it's a certain
for that hour and a half.
Which mass are we going to go to?
Right.
We decide which one, and so and that's our one day a week kind of thing. But really, church is 24/7. Especially the domestic church never stops, never closes.
Right.
Constantly going. Right. And so it's important for us to keep that that in the forefront, right? Now, so when I'm talking to a couple about how big their domestic church is going to be, that's one of the things I ask early on in a marriage prep session when I first meet the couple. I'm going to ask them like, well, how many kids do you want to have? And I love hearing the answers. I got to be honest with you. Now, I don't laugh. I don't chuckle. I don't smile with a wry, knowing grin. You know, like don't you hate talking to people like that? And all of a sudden they're looking at you like, you have no clue, do you? And you're like, I do too have a clue, you know. But I love hearing what they have planned. And it's amazing how many have all these plans in their head. And it's not wrong to have plans. God gave us a brains that we can reason with. And so we have these faculties that we use to sort of help ourselves get through this world, right? It's supposed to be informed by God's presence, right? By the Holy Spirit. But when you ask them how many kids they want, it's like, well, we're going to have 2.3 kids, 1.4, and it's like, okay, all right, you got your, interesting. And they'll have ideas that like, well, what we're going to do is we're going to get settled. We're going to get the house. We're going to get the things that we need, put all the things in place. It's kind of like they're with those doomsday preppers,
Oh, yeah.
We're going to get some jugs of water, and we're going to get all these rations and food, whatever non-perishable stuff, and we're going to all the batteries. We're going to start. It's like we're going to get all the preparation ready for the big day. Well, they think that way sometimes with kids. We want to have a couple stable jobs, or at least one stable job. We want to have a house, a place. We want to be near a school. It's like, okay, look, they're going to look at each other and go like, okay, we ready? We're ready. Let's have kids. We don't want to have too many, because when you have too many, they're very expensive, right?
Yeah.
And they're thinking like, well, they got to go to college, and it's like, well, honestly, we're going to have two. And it's amazing how many people think that, right? And that's why it's important for I let them say those things, and then I talk to them and say like, well, and there's a natural time in the conversation where they kind of look at me like, well, what did you think? Like when you were getting married and whatever. And I tell them the story and I say, when I was dating my wife, Bess, hello, Bess. When I was dating her, I would go over to their house, and she was one of 15 kids. And I'm like, 15 kids, okay, all right. And I mostly marveled at going at all hours of their house, and that I'd walk in and there'd be like these little boys that were like, they were sound asleep, but they were hanging like their head was on the floor, but their legs were up on this couch, they're kind of slumped over like, I don't know, like a boneless chicken ranch. They just were kind of just flopping around wherever they were. And there was also this constant noise, like when you're in New York, you hear horns and stuff like that and sirens. In their house, you'd hear kitchen cabinets slamming constantly.
Yeah.
Bam, 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 bam. It's just constant. So it was an interest. So I marveled at that. And, I knew she had 14 brothers and sisters. And I knew I love her, but I knew then I was falling in love with her. And I will tell you, I never asked her like, wait, how many kids do you want to have when you get married? I think I was divinely protected. I think that God said, you don't need to know that.
Yeah.
Do not ask that question.
You're on a need to know basis.
Yeah, exactly. And you don't need to know that, because I might have back then thought like, what? 15? What? No. I don't, because, it seems like overwhelming.
Yeah, it does.
And even today with 9, you've got 5, and that's a big family.
Yeah.
Right? And the commitment that's involved in that. And did anyone ever ask you like, dude, what's that like?
Yeah, well, the thing that we got was a lot of negative stuff.
Yeah.
Which really bugged me. Still bugs me.
Yeah.
Do you not know how that works?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah, except
look at you like you're a freak.
I know, but that's when you learn things like, I know exactly how it works.
Yeah.
In fact,
Pretty good at
maybe
it.
you need to know, right? I mean, anyway, it's like when someone asks me like, what's it like having 9? I said, you know what?
The logistics. That's what I think of when I see that.
See, I don't even think that way.
What's the logistics
What
of
I
that?
look at it is like this: 9 is just one more than 8.
Yeah,
Right?
no, I
8 is
get
just
that.
one more than 7. Well, that's my point. Is they will ask.
When I see that,
this
I
big
think
number.
of lunch.
Well,
How do you make lunches?
Yeah, you learn early on that if
Yeah.
you're gonna have a bowl of ice cream, you're making 9 bowls,
9 bowls,
10,
right.
10 bowls of ice cream,
Right.
or what are you? I get that, and also, man, when you have little kids and you have a bunch of them, when you open up a bag of potato chips, you know that noise it makes. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, they come running. It's like
Yeah.
it's like the cat food when you open up the can of cat food.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
cat shows up. But anyway, it's I tell people in marriage prep, here's the thing. As we go through this process, you need to start to pray about this and open yourself up to what God is going to provide for. One of the most amazing things to me is if I'd have thought about it, I wouldn't have wanted 9 kids
Right.
early on. If I'd have thought about it.
Yeah.
But honestly, I can't look back at a time where I go like, we were not provided for.
Right.
We always had enough, and we have enough now. We're not rich. We've never been rich, And honestly, when we needed a little more money, we got a little more money. When we didn't need the money, we were able to give away a little bit of money. The honest truth is we've been provided for.
Yep.
And so some of this is like about trust. And I'll ask them that question, like, do you really, well, first, do you believe in God, right? Which I think they do generally, right? They haven't really been tested a lot, but they do. It's like, well, but do you trust that God? Do you trust that God's gonna, if He takes, like Jesus says, takes care of the sparrows, and and they don't worry about it? What about what about you? He loves you a lot more than a sparrow, so He's going to take care of you, right?
That's
So
right.
this is the open to life thing. But the other thing that we mentioned in that domestic church part of our discussion when we opened up with the paragraph 2685, where it says the family is the domestic church where God's children learn to pray as the church, right? It's also important to understand that that parents are the first teachers of the faith, right? They're responsible. When I ask them, like, well, who's supposed to teach the faith to your kids? Man, people instantly think, because we live in a culture now that is very, very tuned in to institutions.
Outsourcing.
Well, the federal government.
Right.
2 people with jobs, and you have you have preschool, and you have your daycare, whatever,
Yeah.
and you have all these other kind of folks that are involved in this process. But especially in the ways of faith, but the primary people that raise the kids are the parents, and that's the way the church sees it. In paragraph 2252, the church says parents have the first responsibility for the education of their children in the faith, prayer, and all the virtues. They have the duty to provide as far as possible for the physical and spiritual needs of the children. Now, it doesn't mean we don't need help. It doesn't mean that there's not a role for governments or institutions, especially when people need assistance.
Right.
But this is an important thing. This particular line politically is politically charged.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because you hear these expressions like it takes a village, but you don't want to give the reins to the village. You don't want to give the power to the village, right? You are, like, God gave you that responsibility as parents.
Exactly.
And that's the hard part for a lot of people to hear. And so when someone says, well, when it comes to the faith, it's the priest. The priest is supposed to be doing it. Like, so we have these homilies at Mass, and certainly the bishop, he's responsible for all the people in his diocese, and then of course the Pope. And these are the people that are in charge of teaching the faith to my kid. And it's like, no,
Right.
the church says no. The church says it's you as parents. So as imperfect as we might be as parents, we have that responsibility. Again, we don't dismiss what the Pope teaches, what the bishop teaches, what the priest or the deacon or religious or whoever religious authority we might be involved with. We don't ignore that, and we see the role there, the importance of that. But the primary teacher of the faith to the kids is the parents.
Yep.
Those kids are going to grow up and do exactly what those parents do.
Yep.
They're going to believe what the parents believe. And so if the parents are teaching the faith, that's what they're going to be. And honestly, If you let a bunch of people who are not the parents teach your kids, they're not going to believe you when you try to tell them.
Right.
Something needs to change or whatever, because you've basically given that over. So parents, it's not always easy to hear, but we do need to make sure that we are active in raising our kids, but also active in teaching them the faith. So, now here's the thing. When we welcome kids into our family, there's something that gets said, at the wedding. So again, new couples preparing for marriage are going to hear these words on the day of their wedding, right? One of the questions before the consent's the vows, and one of those questions, it says, the third one, the last question is, are you prepared to accept children lovingly from God and bring them up according to the law of Christ and His church? And they must, and the church is very specific about this. They must both independently and audibly say, I am. They can't say we are. They have to say, I am. So each person has to answer in a way that the minister hears that they say that. So they assent to this. Basically what they're saying is, we're going to raise our kids Catholic.
Right.
So be aware of that, folks, because this is important. Parents are going to raise the kids Catholic, and parents are responsible for the faith of their children, right? They must be prepared to teach that faith. And here's the thing, if you're not, now's the time to start thinking about it, right? Maybe this is the time that you want to look into that and start understanding, what does my faith teach? That's why when I'm doing marriage prep and I'm meeting with these couples, and I meet with them somewhere between 8 and 10, 12 times, we're meeting for 2 hours at a time, and we're talking about all kinds of faith stuff. It's not just specifically marriage, but it's things that are going to be involved in raising your kids in the faith. So you need to know your faith, right? There's that Latin phrase, we've said it many times on this show, but at nemo dat quod non habet. That Latin phrase literally means you cannot give what you do not have. So if you want to raise the kids in the faith, you need to know the faith. You got to have that faith. You can't give them a faith that you don't practice. And trust me, kids see right through the words only, with not followed by action.
Right.
I mean, how many times have kids watched you, Tom, and go like, I'm going to do what Dad does, not what he says.
Oh, they watch every move. They repeat every word.
That's right. That's right.
They don't miss a beat.
No, they don't. And they can see through you if you're saying, you know what? I know Dad says this word, but you shouldn't say that word.
Right.
What do you think they're going to do?
They're going to say the word.
They're going to say the word. It's just what they're going to do, and they're going to model their behavior after yours. So if you want your kids to be holy, you need to be holy. They're not going to be holier than you, except for by grace of God. Because a lot of times there's broken families and there's problems or whatever, and somehow some kid manages to bring that grace back into the family. But the reality is, for the most part, they're just going to be just like you. Just in the same way, if you if you eat a little too much, if you drink a little too much, if you swear a little too much, if you lay on the couch on Sunday mornings instead of go to Mass, that's exactly what your kids are going to do. Right. And that's why we have to be attentive to all that and realize, again, we're the first teachers, because it doesn't say we're the first teachers of the faith, like with words only.
Right. Because
we can also be the first negative teachers of the faith. We can teach our kids not to be faithful.
Oh, absolutely.
By our not being faithful. So that's something that we need to do. Now, there's another aspect of this that I also talk to folks about that's really important. It seems that in this day and age, more and more, well, we'll just say there are fewer and fewer active Catholics, just like there are fewer and fewer active Baptists, Presbyterians. You go down the list. I think one of the only active Christian churches that's really growing to any extent is the non-denominational evangelical. Right? And I am not knocking I can say it.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, those people. I'm not knocking them, because I was one for a couple of years while I was sort of discerning what to do. Good, holy, faithful people, right? But to some degree, non-denominational allows you, this is the wrong word, but I'm going to say it anyway, lazy, right? You don't have to pick. You don't
Right.
have to choose. You just have a relationship with Jesus. And we don't want to be affiliated with any particular denomination. So in other words, we don't want to have a set of standards or rules or confessions. Now, generally, most non-denominational evangelicals are really going to have either a Calvinistic sort of twist or a Baptist sort of twist, slant. They're going to lean one way or the other. And I get all that stuff. But the reality is that's non-denominational is about the only one that has any kind of growth, right? There's a lot of people that are all over the map, and there's a lot of people struggling to have any faith at all. So we have a lot more either practical atheism or pronounced atheism or agnosticism or just like laissez-faire, like, I don't know, I'll deal with it when I get closer to my death. You know, there's just a lot of that kind of stuff going around. So what happens when two people fall in love, you know, there's a pretty good chance you're going to fall in love with someone who's not Catholic, if you're a Catholic. Or if you're a non-Catholic, you're going to fall in love and that person's going to be Catholic. And at that point, you have these two different faith traditions. Now, in the sort of honeymoon phase of life, certainly during the dating phase, man, everything is great. We talked about earlier about communication and stuff like that, but honestly, there's no bad communication when you're just dating. I mean, everything about them, you know, is wonderful. You love being with them, and you're certainly not going to bring up any challenging stuff because you want to be around them. They're cute, they're funny, they're, you know, full of life and whatever, and you talk about the things you have in common and et cetera, and that's all great. But honestly, when you fall in love, you really need to start talking about those things that might be an enemy. Remember, we've talked about one flesh here, right? This whole series has been based on the concept of one flesh. The two become one flesh. When you become one flesh, and within your flesh, you have a Baptist and a Catholic, a Presbyterian and a Catholic, an atheist and a Catholic, and you may have fallen in love, right? You're in love. Well, that's going to be okay for a little while because you've learned to deal with it, right? I'm okay, she's okay, or he's okay, whoever your partners. You know, we're okay. We realize we have some different ways of looking at that. The problem is when you have kids, right? Kids are this great gift that come from God, the fruit, the natural fruit of marriage. That's what you should expect when you get married. You're going to have kids. Well, when those kids get to be 5, 6, 7, 8, they're going to ask a lot of questions.
Oh, yeah.
They will not be satisfied with, well, you don't need to know that right now. Or, no, it's not a big deal. You know, mommy thinks this way, daddy thinks this way, whatever. They're going to go like, well, wait. Because to them, they see black and white. They see right or wrong. So who's right? Is daddy right or is mommy right? And they want to know. And this is a conundrum for them. It's a problem.
Yeah.
Because they want both of their parents who they love and who
Together.
love them they want them to both be right. Right. So it's like daddy believes that little white circle thing is Jesus and mommy doesn't, or vice versa. Which one's right? It's like, and at some point you're going to have to answer them. You've got to figure out an answer, right? So I tell couples that are like of different faiths when they're coming together, and they're smiling, looking like, you know, we're okay, we're good. It's like, I get that you're good now. What are you going to tell when that you tell everything to your child and they believe everything you say? So essentially, you're going to tell your kid that daddy's wrong or mommy's wrong, right? You're essentially, in their minds, two people can't be right at the same time on two opposing views, which, by the way, is kind of true. Right, so you have to figure out what's true and what's not true, and you teach that truth, right? Unless you are going to fall into that trap of, well, the truth is nothing is really true, right?
Yeah.
That's bad. That's, relativism is an evil disease that eats a person alive. That's exactly what Pope Benedict was talking about. Moral relativism is the worst kind of relativism. So it's like, well, my truth is this, your truth is that. So let's just have different truths. It's like, well, that doesn't work. 1 + 1 has to equal 2. And if it doesn't, then we're not communicating, right? This word has to mean this thing, or we're not communicating. We're not able to live together. We're going to have to get on separate islands and things like that. So the thing is, you're going to have to work with your kids in a way, work with each other so that when you come together to your kids and say, these are different faiths. Now, I am not suggesting that everybody has to be of the same faith. You can have. I had known many relationships where the parents are of different faiths, and their kids, Now note though, everybo's happy, but the kids have to be raised Catholic. If you're getting married in the Catholic Church, based on that third question of before the consent, are you prepared to accept children lovingly from God and bring them up according to the law of Christ and his church? You are saying they're going to be Catholic. Mm-hmm. You are saying that in front of your spouse-to-be. You're saying that in front of the minister. You're saying that in front of the entire congregation in public, mm-hmm. and you're saying it before God. You're basically promising that you're going to raise these kids Catholic, and you can't put your fingers behind your back, right, and cross your fingers. You can't do that, mm-hmm. right? And so you got to raise these kids Catholic, so you're going to have to figure something out. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you now, it's not going to be easy. Mm-mm. It's not going to be easy. So, folks, even now, at some point, you're going to have to, reckon with this and start to think, what do I believe? And here's the thing. At some point, you can start to, really put yourself 110% into your faith now. Mm-hmm. This is the time to do it. Invest now in your faith. Reinvest. Rekindle that faith. Ask for a big old heavy dose of the Holy Spirit on both you and your spouse or your spouse-to-be, whatever the faith tradition is, and live that faith fully going forward. And let the Holy Spirit guide you, carry you, and take you to the place where you need to be as a couple, so that when you present that to your child or your children, you're not presenting them with some conundrum and with some thing that can't be figured out. Right? Let's not do that to the kids. So live your faith, love your faith as you love each other.
Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Thanks for listening to the Catholic Cafe. If you'd like to contact Deacon Jeff, send him an email at deaconjeff@thecatholiccafe.com. Visit us on the web at thecatholiccafe.com. You can also find us on iTunes or follow us on Facebook and Twitter. The Catholic Cafe is brought to you by the Order of Malta Federal Association. Join us again at the Catholic Cafe, serving up salvation one cup of coffee at a time.